Hey everybody, it's Helen Hillix, host for From My Heart to Yours. And today I have a lovely, powerful guest, Kelsey Aida. And she is a a self-empowerment blogger and an author. And she has a really, really interesting and wonderful story, a very inspiring story with lots of twists and turns. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about that. But I want to include her in this whole idea of this podcast, From My Heart to Yours, of stories about people and why they have become who they have become. I think that is like the most fascinating thing in the world to me, really, is, who are you and why did you take this path and not that path? And what was it that led you down this road and not that road? And so often it is some kind of obstacle, some kind of challenge, some kind of struggle. I mean, rarely have I ever met anyone that I find interesting who just woke up one day and said, "Oh, I'm going to do this." And that was it, a straight linear way to success. That kind of story does not inspire me, but it really inspires me when I hear people's stories who have in mind to do one thing, but they end up doing something completely different and why they did that. So Kelsey is just another one of those examples, and I know you're going to be inspired by her story. So welcome, Kelsey, and tell us a little bit more about what you do, and then we're going to dive into your story.
Thanks. Yeah. So basically, my name is Kelsey Aida. I'm an inspirational blogger and author. And how I came onto this path is kind of a long story that we'll get into.
Well,
but
yeah.
Basically, I like to teach people how to own their power and win at life, which includes a lot of topics like manifestation, the law of attraction, creating your reality, loving yourself, mastering your emotions, not giving up, using affirmations, all these tools that I've found really helpful on my journey and my path. I like to share them with everyone else. So I do this through my blog, my Instagram. I have a couple online courses, and I'm also working on my second book. So yeah, I just like to teach the people things that have worked for me, because I feel like life can be hard and sometimes we make it like unnecessarily hard. And I like to make things a little easier, more enjoyable. We only have so much time here. We might as well have a good time. So that's kind of my motto.
I love that. And that really touches on one of my very favorite topics, is the needless pain we cause ourselves. I'd like to, I could go on for 3 hours about that, but I want to hear your take on what distinguishes needless pain from inevitable pain? Because when you said life can be difficult, that is bullshit. Life is difficult. Life is challenging. We are going to have painful experiences in our lives, period. So what distinguishes needless pain from productive pain, let's say?
Yeah, I really like this question. And I like that you picked up on how I said life can be difficult, because that was a very selective way of me using my words, because I don't like to affirm that life is difficult, even though it is in periods. Like, I'm not saying that it's not, but I am saying that sometimes it is easy, sometimes it is difficult. Like, there's waves and periods for everything. So for me, yeah, you're right. Life is difficult, but I don't like to use that as an affirmation, because then I feel like I'm going to make my life more difficult more of the time than it needs to be. So going back to your question, like how you're saying.
Which brings up the second.
Which brings us right into the question.
Before I forget it, because with my mind, I see in your mind, I'll forget the second piece. I do want to talk about the distinction between needless and productive pain, but I also want to talk about how our mindset, I know you're going to get to that, but that's really what you're talking about, is setting an intention with your words. And I don't want to forget that point. So go back to the distinction.
We'll go back to that, because I'm all about words and the power of your words and the power of your intention. So I feel like pain is inevitable. Obviously, we're here in this human experience. There's a lot of contrast. There's a lot of nice things. There's a lot of not so nice things. There's a lot of ups. There's a lot of downs. You can't avoid pain, but I feel like you can help yourself to suffer for shorter amounts of time. And suffering can be perpetuated by repeating negative thought patterns that aren't serving you. Sometimes if you don't allow yourself to feel your emotion fully, it will keep coming back up until you do, which makes the pain cycle longer than it needs to be. Something I've learned recently is that if you dive head first into your pain and let it live for a few minutes at a time in a really intense way, which is hard and takes practice and courage and bravery because it's really uncomfortable to be in those painful emotional states. If you actually allow it to be okay to sit in that pain for 10, 15 minutes, fully unapologetically, sobbing, screaming, crying, whatever it is, you can actually release it from your body a lot faster, and you don't have to carry it with you for such a long period of time.
I love that.
When you actually let it live and let it breathe. It's when we have pain that we keep suppressing and we keep denying and we keep invalidating that makes the process of the pain longer and more drawn out, and the healing takes longer, I've noticed in my experience.
I love that. And, I've been a therapist and intuitive counselor for 35 years. So that is like my motto, is if you don't face it and dive deep, you're going to just exacerbate the suffering. And I think it's a Buddhist saying that, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Mm-hmm. And I really adhere to that belief, because that to me is the distinction between the needless pain and the productive pain, is that there is going to be pain in life. My daughter is a recovering heroin addict, and I have had unbelievable periods of pain while she was using. She's over 2 years clean now. Thanks to,
Yay.
Thank you, universe, and her own courage. But it's like there was nothing I could do about that. That is just a painful situation. But I didn't have to suffer. I didn't have to focus on that. I didn't have to try to fix that. I didn't, it's like, that's just one example of it. That pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. I kept focusing on my own life and moving forward. We can talk more about that, but that we could talk our entire time about the distinction between needless pain and productive pain. But I always use this example of it's like a thunderstorm. You get to allow it to come over and drop the rain and scream and cry, like you said, and then allow it to blow over with the wind. And then another thunderstorm will come another day, and it will bring you that dark cloud and the tears and whatever, and then it will blow away. And I think people are do you agree with this, Kelsey, that people are afraid they're going to get stuck in the storm?
Yes, I think that's the number one reason why people are afraid to actually go all the way there and let that emotion come up the way it wants to, because they're like, oh gosh, I don't want it to last forever. I don't want to get stuck in it. What if I don't know how to get out? And it's not really about that. It's like when you allow the emotion naturally, your body knows how to heal. Your emotions know how to heal. My new motto, similar to yours, is feeling is healing. So all you have to do in order to heal the emotion is to feel it. Just feel it for a little bit and make it okay. I think the reason why painful emotions are even more painful than they need to be, talking about unnecessary suffering, is because we resist it and we make it wrong. So for example, when you're sad, you'll be like, oh, well, I don't really have a good enough reason to be sad. I shouldn't be feeling this way. That's like the number one sentence that will make your pain 10 times worse. I shouldn't be feeling this way. But if you allow it to be okay, actually, I am human. Something bad happened to me. I'm allowed to be sad. This is shitty, and that's okay. That is when you can really befriend the uncomfortable emotion for that certain period that it needs to be coming up. And then from there, you can move forward in a more healthy way.
I really appreciate that. And again, I can't tell you how many times over the 35 years that I've heard this, I don't, that's in the past. I don't want to dig up the past. I've moved on. And I'd like to, I could again go on about that for 3 hours, but I'd like to hear your experiences and thoughts about that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked this question because I feel like there's a notion out there, a theory out there that all you need to heal is time. And that's actually not true from my perspective. I feel that time helps the healing process. It helps you to integrate things. It helps you to move on. But if you're only banking on time as the only factor to heal you, you're actually going to carry that pain and trauma for your whole life until you deal with it. So that's like what you're saying when these patients and clients come to you and they're like, well, that's in the past. Like, I don't need to dig it up. Well, if you didn't deal with those emotions that you were feeling when it happened, they're still inside of your body. You're still carrying that vibration. You're still carrying that trauma. So it hasn't actually been released yet. So it is still a problem, even though it's a problem that started in the past.
Yeah, I love the saying, you have to reveal it in order to heal it.
Yes.
It's another rhyme thing, feel it to heal it and feel it to heal it. You could say you have to feel it and reveal it to heal it,
Well, sometimes you have to reveal it first because you don't even know what you're feeling. Like, you don't actually know what's going on. You have to find out.
Very good. So, okay, let's say that then we have to reveal it to feel it to heal it. And people so often, they have taught themselves to believe that it's not impacting them anymore. Oh yeah, I was molested by my father for 5 years, but that has nothing to do with the fact that I weigh 300 pounds and I'm afraid of men. It's so true. And some of the ways of it manifesting are so obvious, but people don't want to believe that that has come from a past experience that is just crying out to be healed. So I don't believe I've ever focused on it so much with a guest, and I appreciate your bringing it up that way because it is such a powerful need if we're going to be all of who we can be.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point that you brought up about how it manifests outwardly into people's lives later on, because I believe that the universe really wants us to heal, and so the law of attraction is actually a mirror for you. So a lot of our problems that have manifested are because of past trauma, because the universe wants you to look at it. So you keep going through these same cycles, these same patterns, and you're like, why do I keep feeling this way? Or why do I keep attracting these type of men? Or why do I keep failing at my job? And it usually goes back to something that happened to you in the past that was never healed. And your life is begging you to look at what's going on so you can finally heal it and stop repeating the pattern. A lot of people think the law of attraction is only for manifesting what you want and getting all these good things. But no, it helps you to see what's inside of you still. So if you don't like what you see, you have the ability to change it or heal it, or set a new intention, or whatever it is.
I really appreciate that definition of the law of attraction, because I'll tell you, I have had a prejudice against the law of attraction in this way, in the idea of, our minds create our reality. I definitely believe that to some degree, but I believe that the universe is also co-creating with us. It's like, I can be in a stopped traffic jam because of a huge accident in front of me, and I don't care how strong my intention is, I'm going to be late.
Yeah.
I'm going to be late. So it's like, it just, I think people sometimes get confused about the fact that the law of attraction is more like you're saying, that it's a mirror. The universe is mirroring for us and guiding us by mirroring to us, what needs to be healed and where we can go if we look at ourselves and heal ourselves and intend what you were saying before. It's about life can be difficult. Well, life is difficult, but it can be a lot easier if we pay attention, right? If we pay attention to what the universe is telling us.
Yeah, just look at what's going on in your surroundings. Lately, I've been doing this practice a lot with relationships, any type of relationship. It doesn't have to be like a romantic one. So when you look at something that's going on in the relationship, let's say you have a friend who's really judgmental of you, and they'll be critical and judgmental, and like you really like hanging out with this person, but when they're critical, you're just like, that's an opportunity for you to go into yourself and be like, well, is there a part of me that criticizes myself? Because this friend could just be reflecting that back to me, being a mirror so that I can see that I don't want to do that anymore.
Or are you a judgmental person?
Yeah, exactly. Is there a part of you that's judgmental, just like your friend? So you're a match to having friends like that, because that's a mirror of who you are. It's a vibrational match. It's an energetic. It's the same. You guys are the same.
So it's bringing it, it's bringing it to your attention. I mean, I'll never forget. I went to the movies once with my ex-husband, and his sister was there, and he was saying something to her, or I can't remember the story exactly, but one of them was being judgmental, and the other one was being judgmental and saying to that person, "You're so judgmental." You're so judgmental. And that
takes one to know one.
And that person said to the other one, "Isn't that interesting how you're judging me right now for being judgmental?" I mean, it's so perfect. And it happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is pretty funny. I always just laugh at life because I'm like, this is too perfect. How can it be like this?
It's just too perfect. I love the AA thing of pointing the finger at somebody else and realizing that 3 of the fingers are pointing back at you.
I never heard that, but that's perfect.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, the law of attraction is great. And like we do get to create a lot of things in our reality, but not everything. And I was confused about this too. And so the theory that I like the most right now, I mean, it could always change because my beliefs are always changing and expanding. So don't hold me accountable to this forever. But right now, right now, what I believe today, this is how I feel about it. Today, I feel like we do ultimately create our whole reality, but from different vantage points. It's not always from the mind. It's not always consciously. We create a lot from our subconscious mind. We create a lot from any dense vibrations that are in the body. We create from our soul, and our soul oftentimes has a very different agenda than what we have. I feel like us as a human, so like human Kelsey, has this agenda to live this really easy breezy, beautiful, abundant life. But my soul is like, oh no, girl, here's some challenges because my agenda is for you to grow. So I'm going to give you these so that you can grow really fast in short periods of time through all the chaos and turmoil and painful things and disappointments, even though that's not what I, Kelsey, Aida, on this human form, am asking for in my life. There's a part of me that is, because it's important for my other goals, not just my earthly goals, if that makes sense.
Well, let me see. I have a different way of thinking about it, but it may be exactly the same thing, just said differently. So I want to check that out with you. My thoughts about it are, I am part of the oneness. I am a little tiny chunk of the oneness of the universe. And so I have all the power of the universe inside me, and yet I'm only one chunk of it. The universe itself, higher consciousness, God, however you think of it, is so far beyond my own ability to prescribe what's good for me. And to me, that is my soul, is that part that is connected to the higher consciousness. And it's not just me. To me is my ego.
And your identity.
My ego is all about protecting me from pain, protecting my survival, all these crazy things that actually limit me. So if I can set my ego to the side and I can flow with the universe's guidance for me, I'm going to go places I never dreamed. And that to me is the guiding principle of life. We are meant to evolve because the universe is always evolving. We're meant to expand because the universe is expanding, not because I individually decide I want to expand. It's because I'm part of something so much bigger than myself. So I don't know if that's exactly the same thing you're saying, or if it's just a different way of saying.
It's basically another perspective that's like an overlay to my perspective, and I feel like they're both really valid, and I like both of them. So mine is just like a little more personal, like, oh, my soul has this agenda of expanding, but my soul is a part of the universe, like you were saying, and the universe the universe's agenda is to expand and is to grow. So we could just replace my soul with the universe, and it's the same theory.
That's exactly what I was thinking. The only thing that I believe is that it's important for us to realize that we are part of something so much greater, because otherwise, this is something I've seen in the manifestation world, is that we can get so triggered in our ego that, oh, I'm going to be all this. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to compete. I'm going to compare. I'm going to, be ambitious. And sometimes people don't listen. They don't stop and really listen to the guidance from the universe because they're so all about what they want. So how do you handle that in your work with people that, when you're using that paradigm of manifestation, how do you deal with people's egos that are taking them down a road that really isn't aligned with integrity or whatever way it's off?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always encourage people to manifest things from the intention of whatever is best for me and will positively affect other people as well, or at least not be detrimental to anyone else in me having it. And most of the time, it's not detrimental to other people, because if you receive something that makes you really happy, then it's going to affect your mood, your vibration, and make you more of a blessing to the people around you. So usually it is a win-win naturally for everyone involved. But as far as you were saying, as like steering people away from their ego, I actually don't too much, because I figured that they're going to have to learn those lessons the hard way. Like, I can't talk them out of it, if that makes sense. And I used to be that person who was like, me, blah, blah, blah. Everything's about me and my experience and my manifestation and my world. And you get in like this bubble. But the bubble quickly bursts when you start living your life like that, and you learn through experience that, oh, there's a lot more at play here. It's not just about me. I am a part of something bigger. And even though I am one small piece of it, I am important, and I'm allowed to want what I want. And everyone has their own personal desires and dreams and goals, which is totally beautiful. But at the same time, it's like, just having that perspective of, but also it's not just about me and getting what I want when I want it. It's the journey, and it's being a part of something bigger. So I feel like people realize that on their own pretty quickly if they're trying to manifest from a really, I never think that manifesting is selfish, because there's enough resources, I believe, to go around. Mm-hmm. So if someone manifests something, I don't usually believe that it's to the detriment of someone else, unless, of course, people are doing like black magic type stuff where they're like trying to manipulate people and put love spells on people and manifest a certain person, which I never ever encourage people to do. And a lot of people come to me like, oh, I need to manifest my ex back, or I need to manifest this person. And I'm just like, no. Hold up. That's not how it works, because everyone has free will. So you can manifest whatever you want, but if it's going to involve another person, they're going to have to also simultaneously manifest you at the same time. Otherwise, you're just basically manipulating someone, which is not cool.
And won't work.
And even if it does work temporarily, it's not going to last. It doesn't work. Yeah.
I like that, because that is such a small example of exactly what I was saying about, you can intend all you want, but if the universe doesn't intend the same thing, it isn't going to happen, or it isn't going to last. If you're meant to be with a person, it's going to happen, and there's nothing you can do to stop it from happening, and there's nothing you can do to make it happen. Yeah. It's a dance between you and the universe. What it sounded like to me is that your work is about really helping people realize that they have so much power than they thought.
Yes. Yeah, I like to really empower people and remind them that they do get to co-create their reality, and that they do get to live their dreams, and they do get to be hopeful, and they do get to have the experiences that they want in this lifetime. That's what I'm all about.
I love that. And that is so important, and I love also that it has to work for other people. I mean, again, another way of saying that is, if we could all think about what is for the highest good of all, including you and everybody else, and that's really what you're saying is it has to work for you, and you get to be conscious of how it impacts everything else. And that's the real win-win, is when it really works for everybody, isn't it? And I really like that. And I think that's such an important part of the self-empowerment world, is to remember that your power, like you're saying, that's what you're all about, is to empower people, to realize what an impact they can have on the world. And like you said, hardly anybody wants to make a negative impact on the world.
No, people usually don't. And I feel like naturally the way things work out, it almost never happens where it's like a negative impact, unless that individual is like mentally ill or really sick or disconnected from their soul or just like not clear-minded, But I believe that everyone at their soul level is a really pure, innocent being. So if someone is not acting in a pure, innocent, or loving way, it's because there's not something wrong with them, but there's something covering up that part of them where they can't access it in that moment. So for example, like murderers. Okay, let's just go to like the most extreme example. People would say, oh, well, they're not manifesting outcomes that are beneficial to other people. And it's like, well, from one perspective, no, of course, because they're taking away people's free will to live. But not to justify what they do, because what they do is obviously horrible. And that's like the number one agreed upon rule, is like, we don't infringe on other people's free will. Like on a soul level, we kind of have that contract with each other. So when one person does that, we shame them and shun them and blah, blah, blah. But from another perspective, that person has their own issues, their own traumas, their own psychiatric stuff going on that caused them to believe that that was the only way for them to maybe connect with people, to feel important in some way, to feel powerful in some way. Like everyone has these basic human needs, and sometimes people just don't know the healthy way to get them. So they have to go to these crazy extremes because they're not in touch with their actual true guidance.
I completely agree. And if we could develop a more compassionate attitude, it would help us provide services that we don't provide in our society. I'd like to hop back to your own personal story and have you tell us about those years as a ballet dancer and what happened to bring you here.
Yeah. So my story starts when I was 2.5 years old. So that's when I was enrolled in dance classes, and like a lot of little girls, my mom was probably just like, oh, well, this would be cute. If she goes to ballet, she'll probably like it. And I really did, because I loved how feminine it was. I loved how strong it made me feel. I loved the artistry in it. I loved how powerful it made me feel when I could use my body in that way. And so my whole life I grew up with the intention of becoming a professional ballerina. So it was like go to school, eat, sleep, dance, like always dancing, training, not like recreational dance, like, oh, I go once a week, it's really fun. Like, no, like 4 hours a day after school, like hardcore. And when it came time to really get serious, when I was age like 14 to 16-ish, that's when you start going away to summer camps and auditioning for companies and blah, blah, blah. My body was already done because I had just over-rotated my hips too many times. I had back problems. Just a lot of the chronic way that we move our body in such an unnatural way was causing a lot of detriment to my body. And so my body didn't really agree with my plan. And my plan was to become this professional ballet dancer. And my body was like, yeah, no, that's not happening in this lifetime. So of course that was definitely like the biggest disappointment that I've experienced early on. That was my first major disappointment in life, because that was my dream. That was my goal. And my body was like, no. And even to this day, sometimes I have the perspective of like, my body betrayed me. It didn't support me in what I wanted to do. We weren't on the same page, So that was an opportunity for healing, and still is all the time. So that's kind of where the story begins.
Let me stop you there, because I love all that stuff you're saying. That is, I know the listeners are going to really resonate with this in their own lives, whether it was, I wanted to be a professional opera singer or a race car driver or an artist or whatever it is, an author, and that, there's something wrong with me because I didn't achieve that outcome. And, like you're saying, your body betrayed you. And this again is where I feel like a lot of people get in trouble. A lot of people get in trouble. It's my idea to become, Gabby Bernstein, like you said. Well, what if you never do become Gabby Bernstein? Is that because there's something wrong with you and you didn't do this right and you didn't mark it right and you didn't take that class? Or is that the universe saying, no, you're not meant to be a professional dancer. You're meant to be a self-empowerment coach and blogger. This is where, again, I feel like it really is, we get to surrender to that there is something bigger than ourselves guiding us. And our intention, if we just go with our intention, can really cause us a lot of pain.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's like almost meant to, like it's all set up, right? So I had this huge desire. I had this huge dream. Boom, blows up in my face. Like that's not an accident that happened, because then it spiraled me on this whole other trajectory. Like how you're saying, maybe I was meant for bigger things. Maybe I wasn't meant to do that. Maybe I'll serve the world better in this way. And now when I think about it, if I go down that timeline in my mind and I say, okay, what would have happened if I had never been injured? And if I did become the ballerina, I might be really miserable because that's a really cutthroat world. I might not have actually liked having that as a career as much as I loved ballet. I might be not enjoying myself as much. I might be having even more hardship. I might be ruining my body more, So it's like, who's to say, well, yeah, that's like definitely would have happened. But who's to say that it was wrong, like how it all played out? And there's this speech from Steve Jobs. It's on YouTube. I don't know how I found it. He gives it at one of the universities, like Harvard or something. And it was all about how you can only connect the dots of your life looking backwards. Like when you look backwards at it, you can say, oh, now I see why that happened, because then this happened and then this happened and then that put me here at this place at this time, and then I met this person and then they gave me this opportunity. And so, yeah, I think it's just important to keep in mind, like, your intentions are important, yes, but if they don't work out, it's not because it's supposed to like ruin your life. It's an opportunity to choose another path. And I prefer to always choose consciously the more empowering beliefs. So I could believe, oh, this happened to me and this was a really sucky thing and I'm still a victim to this day. I'm still sad that I didn't get to be a ballerina. Or I can choose, okay, everything happens for a reason. That obviously wasn't supposed to pan out because it didn't. So now I'm here doing something new that I actually do really like. So maybe that's why it all had to happen how it did.
And it's perfectly natural too, what you were saying. Sometimes you still have those feelings, It's like we get so invested in a certain outcome, whether it's, gosh, if only Jonathan had married me, and 20 years later, I'm still thinking, like my life would have been better with Jonathan. Well, it's like, okay, you can have, again, it's like the storm cloud. Let yourself have that feeling for a moment, but let it pass, because otherwise you are going down a rabbit hole you don't want to go down.
Yeah, I think it's just always a good practice to become the observer of your thoughts and emotions. So sometimes you don't get so stuck inside of them, like all feeling sorry for yourself, which is not wrong to feel sorry for yourself every once in a while. Like life is hard, you got to have some self-compassion. But at the same time, like none of us want to get stuck there because life is short, like I said earlier. So.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what kinds of courses you offer, and because I know if we're talking about what your work is, I know we're going to get into some other deep stuff.
Yes, perfect segue. So basically, in this moment, I'm really passionate about teaching about manifesting and the law of attraction, because I find it's one of the most fun, empowering ways to create the experiences that you want in your life. But also, more recently, I'm really, really passionate about teaching self-love. So my first course that I created is called Manifesting Masterclass. It's basically a 30-day online intensive where if you're new to manifesting and the law of attraction, I'll teach you the formula of how to do it so you can apply that to your dream house or your a really fulfilling career, or maybe you want that romantic partnership, like whatever it is that you want to experience, I can help you to create it, giving you those guidelines. That's the first course. My newest course is called Radical Self-Love, and it's all about how to access the part of you, call it your soul, call it your higher self, call it God, that already loves you unconditionally, so that you don't have to go changing yourself in order to try and make it easier for you to love yourself. You can just start right at the goal where you're trying to go, which is self-love. And then from there, things become easier and you feel better and more confident, and you just really align with who you actually are and how your soul actually feels about you, as opposed to always listening to what your ego mind has to say and what your limiting beliefs tell you and what your teachers told you growing up and what your parents may have taught you unintentionally about yourself. So that's the newest one.
It's interesting because the two things seem so different to me. You know, one of them is I'm going to teach you how to make your outside world what you want. And the other one is I'm going to teach you how to make your inside world what you want.
Yeah.
That's how I hear it.
It kind of is like that, because that's kind of how my journey went. I kind of started from the outside in, because when I realized that I could, so I'm like a perfectionist, anxious, control freak type person, and not by nature.
If you weren't, you would never have been a ballerina.
Exactly, right? That's
Absolutely.
like the type of personality that it takes to be a ballerina.
And incredibly focused and ambitious. Never would have worked.
Yep. So that was me in a nutshell. It's still, I mean, I still have those tendencies, but now I'm more aware of them. So it's different. Yeah. But before I was like, I can create my own reality. Another thing for me to control, another thing for me to micromanage, another thing for me to achieve. So I really latched onto the idea of like, wow, I can really manipulate my outer reality and make it all fulfilling and blah, blah, blah. Which is fine, but then you realize like, okay, there's more than just that. And so it's funny because it seems like they're opposite, but they actually really do go together, because then you look at it from the self-love perspective, and it's all about changing your vibration from the inside. And ultimately that's going to help you manifest anything, because when you feel better, you're a vibrational match to all those things that you wanted in order to help you feel better, because the only reason you ever want any outside thing or outcome is because you think that when you have it, you'll feel better. But what if you just skip the having part, feel better first, then as a side effect, all those things that you wanted will ultimately come to you because you're a match to them anyway. So it's like a win-win. It's a little more direct approach that way. So it's funny because when I launched the Manifesting Masterclass, it was this big launch. Everyone was all about it. And this was a few years ago. And now when I did the Radical Self-Love, it was a little less sexy, because I think people didn't understand that, like, it's not about an outcome, you know, like everyone wants to manifest these things. They're like, oh yeah, I'm all about this course. Like, let's do it. But when the Radical Self-Love course came out, like, I think everyone wanted to love themselves, but they didn't care enough because they didn't see how it was going to affect their life. You know, they were like, oh, this is just the internal work. Like, that's not as sexy. That's kind of boring. And so the launch was kind of slow compared to what I had imagined it would be. Because I was like, whoa, everybody needs to know this. This is great. This has changed me. This has changed my life. But it wasn't like sexy enough, because it didn't have like this enticing, like, this is what you'll get, you know, like where the manifesting one did. So it's pretty interesting to note that.
Well, and what a reflection of our society, Kelsey. What a reflection of our society. It's like our whole society is dominated by ego. You know, are your breasts big enough? You know, do you look young enough? You know, do you have enough money? You know what I'm saying? Did your boyfriend buy you a Lamborghini for your birthday, or at least a car? You know, I mean, it's so much about the external things that we can accomplish. So no wonder the manifesting workshop is like, woo!
Everyone's all on board for that one.
You know, I want that. And it's like the same thing. It's like people know that radical self-love is going to be painful. You're going to look at painful messages you give yourself. You're going to have to deal with pain. And people don't want to do it, even though you're so right in that. From my experience anyway, once you love yourself and you feel aligned with the universe, then it's like, yeah, you will be an attraction for different kinds of things, but it's like you won't care anymore.
Yeah, you're not so attached to it because you don't need it. At that point, it
Exactly.
just becomes like the cherry on top.
Exactly. And it's like all that compulsion to achieve and accomplish and produce, unless it's really in alignment. I mean, I am like obsessed with expanding, my reach because I want to be of greater service to the world. And I get to accept whatever happens as the universe's feedback to me. But whichever way it goes, I get to love myself. That's the home base, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's funny because we get into this self-empowerment space, this self-help space, because we actually secretly hate ourselves and we want to change everything about ourselves, and we always need to improve ourselves because we're not good enough. We always need to achieve more because we haven't achieved enough. And like, you don't have to deal with any of that garbage anymore if you just go directly to the source of self-love, which is what you're trying to get by doing all those things all along. So like for me, I became addicted to self-improvement and improving myself because it was never good enough. But when you learn to love yourself how you are, then you're good enough and you can get out of the hamster wheel.
Well, how do you, I know we're kind of coming to the end of our time, but how do you integrate those two teachings? How do you teach the manifestation masterclass? Have you found that you teach it a little differently since you have started the other masterclass of radical self-love? And
Yes.
if so, how?
Yeah, so the Manifesting Masterclass is actually a series of pre-recorded videos, and I have this deep, deep desire and intention to redo the whole thing now that I know more and I have a broader perspective on the topic, because it's an amazing course. Like, it works. Like, I've helped people manifest crazy things, but now I have a more holistic approach to it. So I'm wanting to go back and redo the whole thing from scratch and include everything that I had before, but also add this new perspective of from the inside out. Let's not make it so much about the outside thing, because that will come naturally once you take care of the inside stuff. And so that's kind of the newer approach. And like, it's not to say that the other one doesn't work or isn't valid, because it is and it works, but it's just now I have more perspectives that I've taken on.
You're evolving.
Mm-hmm.
You're evolving. I love that. And I so value that, because I feel like some teachers, I'm just going to call you a teacher for a moment, get stuck. They have a message that brings them an income. Well, and there's nothing wrong with that either, because like you said, that message is valid and people like it and they get something from it. But we're always evolving, aren't we? And I don't know whether you'll ever go back and redo that one, or you'll have a third course that is somehow an integration of those things, from self-love to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't know what your path is, but I love that you're talking about evolution and not getting stuck in anything, in any form, because whatever that form is, it's just like ballet. You took that to the end result, that you could not do it anymore. Your back hurts, your body hurts. And if you had just kept pushing, who knows, you might have been able to be a professional ballerina, but at what cost? It's just like, if you're not listening to the universe, you're going to go down the wrong road. And I love that you're talking about that, since you did that very successful course, your thoughts have changed, and bravo.
Thanks. Yeah, that's why earlier when I was like, this is my belief today, but like, don't hold me accountable, because I really want to be allowed to evolve. And I feel like sometimes the people around me, they see me teaching this one thing, and then if the next day I teach something that builds on that, they're like, well, what about what you said yesterday? Isn't that a contradiction? And I'm like, well, no, because all these perspectives are valid. They've all helped me to some degree along my journey, and so I teach them to help other people. But it's like, I don't want people to be able to put me in this box and say, oh, this is your thing. Like, no, I'm always growing. I'm always expanding. My beliefs are always going to be bigger and changing. And like, I'm allowed to do that. Just because I teach things, that doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. like opinion, or that it should never change or be allowed to evolve.
I love that. And, this may seem like a complete tangent, but it's how I think about the Bible, for instance. It's like the Bible was written 2,000 years ago. And do you not think God has evolved in 2,000 years? We are built on evolution because the whole universe is built on evolution. That must mean that God is evolving, because God is all of us, is the universe, is me. And so people get these ideas. It's like people don't like that idea. They don't like the idea that their teacher, you, could change and keep growing. You know why? Because the ego is desperately looking for safety.
Yeah.
And we want to find something that is solid and safe, and that's why people like the Bible. They're like, no, look at this particular thing on this particular page, and that's the word of God. Well, no, it isn't. It's what some human being wrote down 2,000 years ago, or less than 2,000 years ago, because it wasn't even written in the time of Jesus. Jesus would be appalled, from my perspective, Jesus would be appalled at what people do with the Bible nowadays.
Well, and it's so open to interpretation, right? So one person's perspective of one sentence could be completely different than someone else's perspective of that same sentence. So it's just like...
Exactly. But, the whole idea that somebody has a hold on reality that's this is true now, it's going to be true forever. It's like, it's always evolving. And I really value that in you, and that you're willing to take that risk. To me, that's a real teacher, Kelsey.
Well,
that's
thanks.
A real teacher is somebody who is willing to say, I'm still growing. And you know what? I might not even believe, it might not just be that it has value in the past, but I might not even believe what I taught 10 years ago. I might have grown beyond that. And yes, it had value at the time, but now I feel something different, and I want it. And you can always say to the person, and you're growing too.
Mm-hmm. And I always just trust that like the right person who's where I was when I created that course is going to enroll in that course. Like I trust the universe to line it up with the right people who need that information in that moment. Even though maybe I've expanded my beliefs since then, it doesn't mean that it's not going to serve them, So I still keep it up, and it does help people, but I do plan on like adding more to it. And luckily, when my students enroll in it, they have lifetime access. So as soon as I redo all the videos, they'll be able to retake the course in this new way too, so they can keep up with me on my journey and use the same tools that have helped me.
That's awesome. And I think it's so important that you realize, when people say, when you say, I have the right to keep changing, I want to be allowed. Well, there's no allowing, that's absolutely, we can't even help it. Even if we want to stop growing, we can't help it.
When you stop growing, you die, basically.
Exactly. That's just part of life. And people don't realize how they change their viewpoints sometimes. It's like, you used to believe spanking your kids was a good thing. But you've watched enough videos and heard enough education now to realize that is absolutely the wrong thing. But if you don't have an open enough mind to learn and to keep growing yourself, then we are all doomed.
Yeah, I feel it's really important that we give ourselves the permission to change our beliefs, to change how we think about things, to change how we look at things, to change who we are, to change our identity, to change what we want. And it's important that we respect that for other people too, and give them the space to change. Because I know, like, let's give the example of an addict. Like you probably have some stuff to say about this. I haven't known too many like hardcore addicts in my lifetime, but I know this is a good example because a lot of times when addicts are healing, the people around them actually don't hold space for them to heal because they keep expecting them to go back to their addiction. So in their mind, they're imagining, they're keeping that person stuck because they're not holding space for them to change, even if it is a positive change.
I completely agree. I can definitely see that. It's like in a love relationship, if your partner changes, but then they have a relapse. Let's say they rage and they are really, really working on that. But it's like you're just waiting for the next rage episode. And then when it happens, you say, I knew you wouldn't,
I
Jane.
knew it. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I knew it. Oh my God. I just hate that. I hate that energy. And I understand it. I have compassion for the person who says I knew it because they're just afraid.
Yeah, they're just trying to protect themselves from being disappointed or whatever, so they just expect the worst. And this is something, if we can go a couple more minutes, I'd really like to touch on this, because I feel like this is something I've really been trying to figure out, like, what is the best approach? I mean, I know there is no best approach, but what's the most beneficial one to me at this time in my life? Because I think a lot of people, naturally, we want to hope for the best, but expect the worst, right? Or prepare for the worst, whatever that saying is.
Yeah, prepare.
And like, I actually don't want to prepare for the worst, because then, like, from a law of attraction standpoint, you're saying, I don't really believe in my dreams. Actually, this is probably more likely to happen. And like, our expectation plays a big role in how things pan out because we're so influential. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I've found that my best approach recently is to try and be as hopeful as possible and just trust that if it does go south at the end, or if it doesn't turn out how I want it to be, I'm strong enough to get through that, and it will only be for something better. So like right now I'm in this situation that involves another person where their timeline is very connected to mine. If they choose a different path, I'll definitely choose a different path. If they choose this path, I'll get on this path. So for me, I'm in this like, basically my timeline revolves around whatever they decide. And so I'm in this limbo period of like, oh gosh, do I prepare for the worst? Do I hope for the best? Like, what's the best thing to do? And I feel like one of the most sad things you can do is just expect the worst right off the bat, because you don't actually know what's going to happen, you know? And even if you are hopeful up until the day, if it does crash and burn, like at least you spent all that time feeling better. And then in that moment you can crash and you can be resilient and feel better later. But what's the point of expecting the worst? If it's going to happen, the worst case scenario anyway, it's going to be pretty shitty when you have to go through it. So why would you torture yourself all the way up until that moment too? Do you have thoughts about this?
What you're saying, and I am completely in alignment with it. You know, I was making up post quotes last night for Instagram, and you know, one of them has to do with that very thing, that if you think you don't trust anyone or you don't trust the universe, it's really that you don't trust yourself.
That is so true.
Because we don't have to trust anybody else. You don't have to trust the consciousness of that other person that you're talking about, who may make this choice or may make that choice. You know, it's like we do not have to go into their heads at all. All we have to do is exactly what you said, Kelsey. That's very wise. You know, I know I'm going to be okay. And it, you know, it goes all the way to when my daughter was out in the street using heroin. It's like, I absolutely didn't trust what she was going to do. But I trusted the universe in that you know, that whatever was going to happen was going to happen. I didn't trust the universe to protect her. I think that's complete bullshit. But I trusted the process of evolution, that if she's meant to die as a heroin addict, that's what's going to happen. And all I need to focus on is how I'm going to strengthen myself, strengthen my support system, continue on my own journey of satisfying my life, so that if she died, I would be able to go on. And I knew I could. I knew I could. And that was something that helped me so much through those years. And I know that for you, that's going to help you so much as you go forward, that, you know, whatever happens, Kelsey Aida can trust herself to cope with it and learn from it, and thereby turn it into, and this, we're coming full circle, turn it into productive pain.
Yeah, because
make something out of that.
Yeah, because I've been disappointed before. I've been in pain before. And every time coming out of it, it made me better, or it made me stronger or more resilient or more comfortable in painful emotions or whatever it is. And so now I'm just to the point where like, I trust myself so much more. And if I hadn't gone through all those hard things, I probably wouldn't know how strong I was, because it would have never been tested or shown to me. So just another, I guess, one perspective where you can look at the bad, quote unquote, bad things as beneficial.
And everything, everything can have a silver lining depending on what we learn from it. It really is up to us to use the experiences of life to teach us something. And that's exactly what you're talking about. So,
yep. School of life. We're all here.
School of life. We're
all enrolled.
And the less we resist it, the more we embrace those lessons, the more empowered we become. So, do you have any special offers you're offering right now, or
special offers? Yes, I actually do. And a lot of people don't know about this, but since you asked, I will give it to you guys.
Okay.
So basically, my course, Manifesting Masterclass, if you are new to the law of attraction and manifesting, it's good for you. If you're not new, it's not really for you. It's more for beginners. But I have this manifesting cheat sheet that's like a freebie, which I will give you the link to so you can give it to all your listeners. And if you go in and download the cheat sheet, there is an offer to enroll in Manifesting Masterclass for less than the full price. So if you download that cheat sheet and you're new to manifesting and you want to learn what it's all about, what is this law of attraction, how can I live a more intentional life, download the cheat sheet, and then the next page that loads will be like a special offer to enroll in the course. So that is the special thing you can do.
Awesome. And tell people how they can find you on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you are.
Yeah, so basically I'm Kelsey Aida pretty much everywhere. So that's KelseyAida, like the Italian opera. My blog.
I love Aida. I love Aida.
Yeah, there's like 4 Aidas in my family, so it's like a whole thing. But my blog is KelseyAida.com. My Facebook page is Kelsey Aida. My Twitter is Kelsey Aida. My Instagram, where I'm most like active, I would say, is Instagram. That's also Kelsey Aida. So connect with me on all those platforms. Read the blog. I just started a new podcast actually with my friend Lindsay Robinson, who's a hypnotherapist, and it's called High Vibe in It. And we talk about, emotions, everything we talked about today. We talk about these types of things. So you guys can go check that out on iTunes. And yeah, I would say if you're someone who just wants to feel better and more confident and really learn how to love yourself instead of going the other way and trying to get the outside things first, if you're ready to do the work, because it is work, and I know it doesn't sound that sexy, but it's worth it, then Radical Self-Love is definitely the course for you. And it's already super affordable. You can pay for it in payment plans too. Like I kept it really low. And even my students are telling me, you should raise the price. Like this has helped me so much. Like it's worth like 3 times more than I paid. And I'm like, I know, but I'm just keeping it open for everyone right now because I really want people to experience the benefits and make it accessible. So yeah, or the cheapest way to work with me is to read my book. #ActuallyICan, The Art of Affirming Yourself to Greatness. And that's all about choosing your words, affirmations, feeling better, just one mood at a time, not trying to jump the Grand Canyon and go from feeling really bad to feeling really good, but how can you soothe yourself into an emotion that's just like a little more relief and then a little more relief and then a little more, and you just keep working your way up.
Wonderful. So basically look for Kelsey Aida and you'll find her free gift. You'll find entry to all of her programs. And thank you so much, Kelsey, for being with me today. I've really enjoyed our interview, and I know it will support the listeners. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was super fun. I always love talking about these things that I get all heated about, so it's good.
Your passion is palpable, and I appreciate that. So thank you so much.